Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Very grateful, as always, that you would come along and listen to our speaker. And this week we've got lovely Andy Workman. Lives in Bristol, and when you hear him speak, you'll know that he definitely lives in Bristol. And so he's talking about what are the traits of lucky people. The facts are astounding. So I'll just do a little bit of what we wrote about that. As always, oh no, that was about it being recorded. So, you know, if you have to miss any of this, it is recorded, sent out the next day. But making your own luck, people often tell us, consider ourselves lucky or that we make our own luck. But is it possible to do so? Many of us believe in the law of attraction, whilst others dismiss the concept. That belief has any influence over life experience in an instant. Which of them are right? Join Andy for this whistle-stop tour of just some of the scientific research that proves beyond doubt that our thoughts and beliefs about how lucky or unlucky we are contribute massively in us benefiting or suffering from being lucky or unlucky. So I know I spoke earlier, I don't know if you all saw it, but I did see it say a little bit about Andy on a video this morning about how I met Andy at the Spirit Quest in Hayling Island, probably about 4 years ago. And you get the opportunity to go to any of the things. There's so many different people you could go and watch, speakers or workshops. And luckily enough, I chose to go to Andy's on the first day I was there. And then he did a meditation every morning and other talks as well. So I went to all of them because after I saw the first talk, I was just so impressed with not that I'm building you up too much, Andy, but some of the
No, indeed, no.
Some of the synchronistic things that you've talked about and that, I did tell them about the one with the publisher through David Hamilton.
Yeah.
And you could tell that far better, I'm sure. But anyway, I'll leave it to you to say hello. And I think you're going to start us off with a short meditation as well, hopefully.
Apparently so. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much for that introduction, Jackie. Yeah, you do build me up for a fall every time, bless you. And if we do get, Jackie told the story on that little video this morning really well, to the point that both my wife and I were sat there watching it, and Karen actually said, "My God, is she actually going to give you anything to say?" But it's but that was fine. It was nice of you to share that, and it was one of those wonderful moments where you think, actually things are moving afoot here. There are definitely bigger hands in play here than mine. So
could you just say that little story though, Andy, just because anyone that didn't see it on Facebook this morning, because I'm sure there's some here that would not have seen that, could you just, because it was a fascinating story.
Oh, right. Okay. So very, very, very brief version then, because it can go on.
Yeah.
So what happened was that I ended up writing a book, and the lead up to that is a fairly lengthy one, so we won't worry about that. But the biggest synchronicity is that I met David Hamilton just by chance. I sat in a tribute evening to the late great Wayne Dyer. And whilst I was at that tribute evening, David Hamilton was on the stage, and I sat there using my law of attraction and my manifestation ideas and said, "Mr. Hamilton, Dr. Hamilton, let's give him the right title. Dr. Hamilton, I know that you're a busy man, but you are going to come and see us one day. You are going to agree to speak to us in Bristol. I just know it. I'm going to get the chance to meet you. And when I ask you, you'll agree. And I'm really grateful for that." I have never spoken to David Hamilton in my life, but in my head, he was my bestest friend and he was going to do whatever I wanted. So the very next day we went to Paddington railway station to come home from London. And my wife said, I'll go and get a cup of coffee. You go and check the time boards to see what time which platform our train leaves from. And I'll meet you back here. So yeah, that's fine. So I went and looked at the time board. I turn around and David Hamilton is literally sat on the bench behind me. So it's like, right, okay, thank you, universe. That was a bit quicker than I was planning, and I don't know what on earth I'm going to say to this man because I haven't had time to plan it, but you don't get moments like that and then turn them down. So I walked up to this gentleman who I had never met other than when he signed a book for me some years before at a festival. And I just said, "Good morning, Dr. Hamilton." And he looked up and he said, "Oh, good morning. How are you?" And I said, "Fine, thank you." He said, "We've met before, haven't we?" And I said, "Well, goodness me, you signed a book for me about 2 years ago, but never before or after that." He said, "No, I recognize your face." And I thought, well, yeah, you don't forget this one once you've seen it. But anyway, he said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm fine." I said, I do appreciate you're going to be approached like this a lot. But would you kindly come and speak to a group for me in Bristol? And he said, "Yes, of course I will." I said, "Well, that's very kind of you to be that positive." I said, "But let's bear in mind, it might only be about 20 people. He said, "I'm going to Swansea to speak to 22 this evening. I don't care how many people I speak to. If I have a crowd, then that's great. If I have one or two, that's okay too." "Okay, well, I can definitely get you one or two." So he said, "Fine, just email me and that'd be fine." So he came to see me. He came to see us, and actually I did manage to get 70 people together. So he was really pleased with that. But that was in the May of the year that he came to see us. So we sat having a talk during the lunchtime. Anybody who's met David will know that he's an incredibly humble man and he's quite shy. So when you're eating lunch with him, you have him to yourself. He doesn't necessarily look to mix with his crowds. He's not standoffish, but he's shy enough that he's quite happy if you're sat there entertaining him. So I had this man, my hero, for an hour's lunch together. And during the conversation, I said to him, "I've written a book." And he said, "Really? Have you been published?" I said, "No." And to cut the story down for this evening, he had an incredibly generous conversation with me where he convinced me in an instant it was much better to self-publish than it was to seek a publisher. And he said to me that afternoon, "If you are going to go and get yourself self-published," he said, "I can't recommend this company well enough." He said, "Go to a company called Anthony Rowe in Chippenham." He said, "They're all over the country." He said, "But I think the local branch here is Chippenham." And he said, "They're brilliant." So we went home that evening, and Karen and I my wife Karen and I had a conversation, and I said to her, "I'm not going to shop around. If Anthony Rowe was a good enough publisher for a man like David Hamilton, he's certainly good enough for this little bloke from Bristol." So she said, "I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. There's probably a message in you getting that advice. So why don't we just go with that?" So I didn't shop around. I made a decision that it was going to be Anthony Rowe I worked with. Now that was the May time. Now in the July time, my wife and I always swim every morning. It's not a big-headed moment. It's part of the story that we always swim a mile each. We swim 64 lengths every morning. Well, this one morning, it was a Friday morning, I got into the pool. I'd only done about 16 lengths when something told me to get out of the pool. And I can't, ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you now what it was. All I know is something said to me, "Get out of the pool." And I was thinking, well, I'm okay. Get out of the pool. So I said to Karen, "I'm getting out." She said, "Why? What's the matter?" I said, Nothing. I don't know what it is, Karen. I can't put my finger on it, but I'm not meant to be in the pool this morning." And she said, "Well, I'm going to continue." I didn't say you couldn't. I don't know about you. The voices in my head are just telling me that I got to get out. So I said, "I'll wait for you in the balcony and I'll see you when you finish. Don't rush." So I went and got changed. I went and sat in the balcony. The second, I cannot express this enough, the moment my bottom hit the seat, I was immediately aware of an awful noise, and I couldn't work out what it was. I looked into the pool, and a very good friend of ours, a man who's genuinely called John Smith, was sinking in the middle of the pool. He bobbed up to the top, and I thought, he's just being silly. He was a gentleman in his 60s, but really good sense of humour. And I thought, he's just messing about. And then all of a sudden, he came up, he made an awful noise again, and he sank again. Well, with that, the 18-year-old lifeguard on his first day at work, bless him, first real duty as a lifeguard, bless his heart, suddenly hits the alarm and jumps into the pool. I realised there's clearly something wrong. I'm not a hero at all, but as an ex-policeman and a first aider, I think, well, I've got to help him. I can't just sit here. So I jump over the balcony and I run round the pool. We drag John out of the pool and he is gone. I'm sorry to say it, but there is nothing there. His eyes are rolled back. He's blue. His lips are purple. We've got no breath. We can get no pulse. So we look at each other and he says, we got to do CPR. Are you okay with that? I said, yeah, absolutely. So we start doing CPR. Managers run down, they help us. They call the paramedics, and we still continue to work on John. And for the first time and last time ever in my experience as a first aider, we had that Baywatch moment where all of a sudden he went, water came out everywhere, and his breathing started. It was incredibly labored. It was horrific. It was a sound I will never get out of my head, but he was breathing at last. So they flew him, literally picked him up in a helicopter and flew him to the local hospital. And a fortnight later, he was walking the high street with a defibrillator pacemaker under his skin as if nothing had happened. Anyway, by September that year, my book had been completed, and I sent it off to Anthony Rowe as planned, never having spoken to anyone else. And I got the bill, the quote, and that was fine. And I sent the book off to be published. But when I sent it off and actually confirmed it, the very day I did that, I got an email back in about 10 minutes saying, this is a personal question. And I must admit, I thought the question was going to be, how on earth do you think anybody's going to buy this rubbish? But thankfully, it actually said, we appreciate your business, but we have a personal question for you. Are you the same Andy Workman who helped a man called John Smith when he had a heart attack in the swimming pool at Keynsham around about July time? And these people are in Chippenham. This is at least 25, 30 miles up the road, you see. So the grapevine's good, but I don't know it goes that far. So I went back to them and I said, yes, it was me. I did nothing more than John would have done if the roles had been reversed. And I'm really glad he's okay. But I'm really intrigued now. How on earth do you know about that? And they came back to me to explain that when my order was received by them at Chippenham, they then had to send it to their UK sales manager, who is based in York. That lady is called Ruth Goodman, but she's only called that because she's married. Ruth Goodman had grown up as Ruth Smith and was John Smith's daughter. So I'd saved the life of the man whose daughter was later to publish my book. She wrote to me a beautiful email in an instant saying, oh my goodness, my team have just confirmed that my biggest wish is that it was you that you had ordered the book. I'm getting choked, sorry. My biggest wish has been manifested because it is you that helped my dad. I can't thank you enough, but my company can. And we're going to reduce the price of your book. So the only adjustment that was made to my book from the moment it arrived with the publisher or the printer to when it arrived with me was I changed the price, because when you get good luck, you pass it on. So instead of the £15 it was going to be, my book was instantly reduced to £9.99. And that sounds really selfless, but guess how many more books you sell at £9.99 than you do if they were 15 quid. So it goes round. But the lovely feedback that book's received by the over 2,000 people that have bought it now, bless them, it's just lovely. But that was the only company that I had gone to, and it was the only company that John Smith's daughter worked for at the time. So the synchronicity involved in luck like that, that's a true story as I sit here, and just one of many that I enjoy sharing with people that are absolutely true. And the reason I say that it's all true like that is purely because some of the stories I tell sound really, really out of this world, but they are true. And the reason I make a point of saying that is because I wouldn't set you up for a fail. If I tell you lies and you go out and try it and it doesn't work for you, you're just going to think that it's disappointing and you're not going to bother. No, everything I tell you is gospel true, because if I tell you any lies to build it up and you get disappointed, you stop trying. If I can tell you the truth, as miraculous as it is, oh, you'll have a go. And that's my mission. You must have a go at this. So that was that story. You're sorry you asked me now, Jackie, aren't you?
Not really. I think everyone would have loved to hear that, even though I've probably heard it 3 times now. Well, I remembered it perfectly, almost perfectly, but not the David Hamilton bit. And so that was really well worth listening to, Andy. And I'm tingling all over, I tell you, and emotional when you said you were.
Oh, I might do that a couple of times. I'm afraid 32 years in the military and the police did nothing to harden me up. I am as soft as marshmallow, I'm afraid. So I will warn you when I'm choking, so you don't think I'm having some sort of episode here. That's the main thing.
Well, that's
So
lovely.
good, thank you. So if we want to do a quick meditation, I'm going to do it, if you don't mind. I'm going to do it without music, because on Zoom music tends to make things very tinny. And I don't want people to get distracted by, oh my God, arc at that music, when in actual fact, it's much better just to listen to your own breath and things like that. So we can do a meditation for a couple of minutes by all means, if that's what you want me to do. Okay.
We all happy with that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just little 5 minutes just so that we get ourselves in the right frame of mind. Okay. So whenever you're ready, then I'd just like you to get yourself comfortable, because having first aid moments when you fall off the chair in 5 minutes is not going to do anything for your mood and calmness at the end of a meditation when you're in traction. So just get yourself nice and comfortable and nice and safe where you can't fall off of anything. And if you could just close your eyes for me. And as you close your eyes, I'd just like you to concentrate on your breathing. I'd just like you to notice that when you breathe in, that air is just slightly cooler than when you breathe out. When you breathe in, that air is just slightly cooler than when you breathe it out. And when you breathe in, that air makes you feel strong and healthy. It makes you feel cleansed and renewed. It makes you feel really well. It makes you feel that way, not because I say so, or because you feel the need to comply with my words here. That's the very last thing we need. Compliance is not required here at all. When you breathe that air in, this is purely natural euphoria that you feel. You see, your brain is fantastic at recognizing the benefits that you are obtaining from breathing in that last breath. That last breath that you've just breathed in is incredible. In actual fact, the last thing that you've just done is breathe in the most important thing you have ever done in your life so far. Every breath you breathe in is the most important life event that you have ever committed up until this moment. You see, every breath you breathe is the one that secures your ability to take the next one. And the next breath that you breathe secures your ability to take the next. And it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what you've done, what you hope to achieve. Everything you have ever done, everything you're doing now, and everything you ever will do is dependent on that breath. So you can imagine how fantastic your subconscious believes your breath to be. You see, that essential oxygen is being recognized as the life-saving event that it is. And it's been doing that ever since you arrived in this world. And it will do so until you go to the next. Every breath you breathe sends every cell within your body into a massive sense of euphoria. And when that happens, it happens every time. Every single breath from the moment you've arrived sends every cell into euphoria, because your whole body recognizes that what you're doing is saving you. It's sending goodness throughout your body, and every cell, regardless of its position, its function, or how it performs that function alongside every other, is going into that wonderful celebration on receiving that hug of well-being, that caress of care. Every single breath you breathe just charges every cell. The problem is, of course, is it's become the norm. When a baby is born and takes its first breath, it cries. And so many times we interpret that as being a worrying thing, something that would suggest it's no longer warm or it feels separation. But you see, a baby that hasn't been able to be granted the power of speech yet may just be expressing an absolute euphoric response to the receipt of that first breath. And now it's the norm, You don't even think about your breath until someone like me brings you back to it. So as we just bring ourselves into this evening with a really lovely sense of oneness and well-being, let's just join this community now, knowing that as we breathe from the same atmosphere. As we breathe as a community of people here tonight with the sole purpose of feeling good, let's just recognize we breathe the same air. It doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter what country we are sitting in. It doesn't matter which room we are in which town. Every single one of us is literally breathing the same atmosphere. We are all of us sitting on the same planet. There is no separation. When we go to the end of our fingers, we see air. But if we took that and we looked at it under a microscope, if we took an atomic microscope, we would notice that there is no division between the atoms of our fingers and the atoms of the atmosphere around us. Likewise, at the other end of this community, there is no division between the atmosphere and your fingers or mine. We are connected, every single one of us, whether it be by the atmosphere we breathe, the planet we're sat on, or the love that we share. Let's just remember that. Let's just count ourselves lucky that we can be around like-minded people, that we can share this nice, loving, warm, supportive friendship, one where we can discuss the oddest things and be accepting of all of our points of view and opinions. No judgment, no silliness, just a trust in what each of us believes to be the truth that we speak to each other. And as we go into this lovely evening now, we can recognize that that breath will continue. And throughout all of our evening together and beyond, that breath will continue to send that euphoric feeling through our body. No matter who we are, whether we met her or not, most of us will have had some form of female older person in life, a grandmother, a mother, an auntie, somebody who we only called an aunt but wasn't quite related. But somewhere, all of us have had somebody that says there's nothing like a breath of fresh air. And she's right. As much as we very rarely like our elders to be correct about anything, she was right. There is nothing like a breath of fresh air. So as we bring this meditation to a close, all I want you to remember is this evening, tomorrow, next week, whenever you need it. If you need to feel calm, relaxed, and balanced, if you need to feel connected and loved, just take that breath of fresh air. Whenever you're ready, and taking that last breath and really recognizing that wonderful feeling, you can open your eyes. There we are. Oh, that's all right. They've all opened their eyes, Jackie. It's when they don't wake up, the paperwork starts. That's the problem.
That was so lovely, Andy.
Right.
Thank you.
We haven't seen anyone off. No problem.
No problem. Just listening to that.
Yeah, my wife often cries listening to me as well. So there's a unification for you there as well. So, so we are going to have a look at the mindset of positive people. And the very first bit here is just a very, very, very quick recap of some of the things that we need to know about how our brains work. But then we are going to go into a little presentation, and then I'll come out and I'll have a little chat. And then by all means, people can ask questions and what have you. So it's fine. So let me see. I've got to share my screen so that I can.
Just while you're looking at that, I'm going to just share what I think Ruby, you met Ruby when you came down here, Andy. She's put, wow, Andy, that was excellent meditation.
I have, yes. Hello, Ruby.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are a hypnotist.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Well, you had that voice about you with it. It was lovely.
No, that's very kind. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so When we're looking at things about mindset and things that are a little bit more spiritual, perhaps, a little bit more esoteric in our approach, what we forget is some of the most learned people, some of the most respected scientists actually believed the same as we do. And I'm generalizing, so forgive me if I'm putting some of my crazy beliefs onto you, but I think I'm amongst good friends with like minds. So actually, it was Einstein who said that we have to make a decision. And it's whether or not we live in a friendly or hostile universe. And that's what we're going to come back to. There are so many people who think the world is against them, and it's not the case. It's just a belief system that they've managed to adopt, and it's quite frightening how much that can have an effect on us. We have one thing in common. Every single one of us has a brain. And that brain is the one tool that we all use, but that none of us received any training on, which is quite scary. This is thousands and thousands times more powerful and dangerous than a power tool, but we give a kid one of these things at birth, for crying out loud. It's scary how dangerous this tool is. But there we are. We've got to get around how we use it and learn how to use it properly. So you've got a part in your brain called your neocortex, and that's the bit that's human, it's logical, it's rational, and it's intelligent. And it will deal with anything. If you have any problem in your life, as long as you come to it via your neocortex, you're going to be okay. The limbic system, on the other hand, is the bit that's smack in the middle, and that's not quite so good. That one there is not logical, it's irrational, and it's totally thick when it comes to working out problems. Having said that, we can't call it thick because the limbic system is incredibly clever in its own way. It's the one that makes your heart beat the right rate, regardless of how it has to adjust it to meet your level of exercise or rest. It makes your breathing change. The second you start running, you don't have to think, oh my goodness, I better start taking a bit more oxygen in. No, the limbic system manages to do that for you at a subconscious level. So it's very clever. Unfortunately, it has three little characters inside, which are going to let you down if you let them. So your amygdala is your security guard, and your security guard is scared of everything, without exception. Right now, the fact that you're sitting on something is scaring your amygdala witless. The last time you took that breath, as wonderful as it was, unfortunately, your amygdala didn't think that. It went into panic. The reason that you were allowed to calm down on receipt of that air is because the hippocampus is the filing cabinet that keeps all the advice that it gives the amygdala to either calm down or step things up. And so the hippocampus is the one that said, that breath is lovely. Oh, I like you doing that. And so it sent a message to the hypothalamus that then said, accept that and go calm when you do. It's just lovely. In actual fact, when we breathe, our heartbeat changes every single time. When we breathe in, our heartbeat gets quicker. And when we breathe out, it gets slower every single time because the hypothalamus is sending us hormones to allow that to happen. So if we get scared by anything, those three little characters join in to be able to make sure that we get that response. So when we get scared, our hippocampus, our amygdala, and our hypothalamus join in to be able to make us do certain things. When we get scared, we increase our heartbeat. We make our breathing more rapid. We get rid of our toxins. Now, forgive me, I know I'm in mixed company, but you will have heard this. People will say, I was so scared, I nearly shit myself. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. If you get scared enough, involuntary bowel movement is one of the options that your brain will take. And if you don't do that, you might end up with a churning tummy. Most of us have been in situations where we get scared enough that we visit the toilet more often than not. So it might well be when people are asked to do presentations. Now, luckily, I'm very comfortable with doing that. I do know some people that if they had to sit here talking to you right now in the way I am, they would be doing it from the bathroom because there is no way on this earth that they'd be doing it any other way. So we do that, and we also get ready to prepare ourselves to respond to a threat. So we get adrenaline coursing through our bodies to get our bodies ready to respond, but we also become hypervigilant. We become very, very aware of everything around us. So when we're under stress, we see things, we hear things, and we feel things that are off the scale to what our normal experience might be. Thankfully, when we do good things and see good things, we get a really lovely response. And that's by the same three characters. The amygdala sees something, it's scared of that hug, but the hippocampus says, it's a hug. Will you calm down, for crying out loud? This is good. And then the next thing that happens is the hypothalamus says, oh, I like hugs. I'm going to send you completely different responses to this. So when you get a nice response, what you do is you get an increased heartbeat. You've only got to see your heart throb on the television, and he's called a heart throb because it makes your heart beat faster. It makes your breathing more rapid. Even I get breathless at the view of George Clooney. So I'm hardly surprised that an awful lot of other ladies and gentlemen get the same response. They get breathless. Yes, you sweat. Yes, you do. When you get a nice experience and your heart beats faster and your breathing gets more rapid, you sweat because you need to cool your body and your system down. You get euphoria. You get a nice feeling. You get serotonin and dopamine, and you get painkillers. Now, my lovely friend David Hamilton will have explained this to you in the past, I'm sure, but actually, I just want you to imagine, this isn't a meditation, I'm just asking you to imagine. I just want you to imagine the last time you had a hug with someone. And it doesn't matter who they are. It might be your husband, it might be your wife, it might be a partner, someone you love, grandchildren, or in Jackie's case, it might even be your beautiful dog. So you have a cuddle with someone, and immediately in that moment, there is no pain in your body. No matter what you've been doing, no matter how poorly you might be, no matter how stretched your muscles might be from the gym, the second you hug someone, there is not an ounce of pain in your body. Likewise, there is not an ounce of stress in your head. The best thing we can do is hug. And I know the government keep on about it at the moment because it's the latest thing they've allowed us to do, bless them. But it's true that when people are missing those hugs, that's why. We get addicted to that intimate space invasion of our own space. And when we can't get that hug, we start to miss it almost like an addict misses their high. So it's hardly surprising that our brain likes nice experiences. Now, you create your feelings with your thoughts. So when we are looking at whether we think we're lucky or whether we think we're unlucky, whether we think we're blessed or we're not, our thoughts start that cycle. The trouble is, you are very easily influenced, and you're influenced much easier than you think. So let's just take a little look. Now let me quantify this a second. Before I go any further, I am not political. I know when politicians are telling fibs because their mouths are moving. So I know that I am not political in the slightest. I don't care what colour rosette they wear on their lapel. I have had lots of dealings with politicians, so I am not political. And forgive me if any of you are on local councils and deeply offended by that, but that's just an opinion. So before I go any further, I'm not into the politics of this. This is just an observation from a mindset point of view. We are very easily influenced. So we have the enemy in the corner. We have that glass box that is constantly playing away in the corner of our room, and it's constantly feeding us terrible news. The reasons for that is because news sells, but only bad news, unfortunately. There are very few positive news outlets, and most of the papers that have tried to develop a positive publication have found that it's failed within 12 months. Very few of our positive newspapers have lasted anywhere near, if not beyond, 12 months because bad news sells. And knowing that, they also put it on the radio. So even in the middle of the nicest programs on the radio or the television, you will get a news bulletin that completely wipes out your positive thinking. I'm a huge fan of the late, great Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. And he made the very valid point that even on the news, when they've got the wonderful story about the little dog that can surfboard, oh, he's wonderful. You've got little Jack Russell and he's got his little life jacket on and he's hanging his 10 toes over the front of oh, he's an amazing surfer. He's the best surfer since they were doing it in California in the 60s. But all the time you're watching that little Jack Russell on his surfboard with his life jacket, there is a red ticker tape going across the bottom of the screen telling you how many people have been killed in some form of disaster or other. They can't even give you the happy stories without that underlining rubbish at the bottom. So we need to be aware of that. Of course, we've got the spreadsheets, the big broadsheet newspapers, and they are filled with bad news because that's the only way they sell newspapers. And it's filled, of course, with political bias. Every single one of them supports some party or another. And so the information you're getting that's taking you out by the knees is actually very biased anyway. It will all be down to an opinion, and that opinion is usually down to the editor or the owner of the newspaper. Doesn't make it fact, it just makes it biased rubbish now. The other difficulty, of course, is if you have the red tops, oh yeah, well, that's biased, but it's also biased with rubbish, because after the stories they do, they make it up as they go along. The difficulty is that when you read them, so many people believe what's in them. I love my mother-in-law to bits. I am not a Les Dawson. I have not got the mother-in-law from hell. She is a wonderful lady. But if she reads something in the Sun, that's it. It's gospel. It has to have been. It has to be fact because it's in black and white. Unfortunately, the amount of conversations we have to try and correct her in that is unbelievable. She's allowed her opinion, and I absolutely respect that. But some of the rubbish she comes out with, just because she's read it in the Sun, you really do have to challenge it sometimes and say, Mum, the world is not that evil. You know, trust me, I've worked a lot with it. It's not that evil. Of course, we are being fed a lot of bad news at the moment, and we understand that. And again, I'm not political. I personally think that this government is the same as any other that's been faced by the awful situation that we're facing right now. And whether you agree with that or not, I respect your view. But they are finding themselves in unprecedented situations. The difficulty with that, of course, is that they give us statistics. They give us numbers, and we're all hanging on the numbers. And some people watch this avidly. I've got an ex-colleague of mine on Facebook who actually relays these briefings onto his Facebook page so that expats can watch it as well. He must really hate some of the expats friends he's got, but we get this put out on Facebook. So what we're getting is bad news. When we look at the numbers, I think this year, today tragically hit 127,000 and something in the way of people that have died from COVID. But when you look at the little foot line, that is 127,000 people who have died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. The difficulty is even if you have a positive COVID test, you recover, you do really well, you've fought COVID off like a Trojan. Then you get on your motorbike and you are tragically involved in a fatal road traffic accident. You are one of those statistics. COVID didn't kill you. But because you died within 28 days of any cause, you will be one of those statistics. So that, there, for a start, is just one of the reasons why those statistics are flawed. Now, I understand why the government, whoever they are, whatever colour they go by, that I understand why they are generating that fear. Because when we look at the COVID situation, whether we believe it or not is a whole different matter. I happen to believe that COVID exists because I've lost good friends through it, unfortunately. One of the first guys to die was one of my ex-colleagues who I love dearly. But the point is that even if we are being fed this rubbish, people are still holding huge gatherings when they shouldn't be. We've got weddings going on in some places in London with 400 attendants, completely oblivious to the fact that we've got this pandemic hitting us. If they're doing that when this fear is being spread, what on earth would they do if they weren't being frightened by people? So this fear is being used as a tool, but maybe, just maybe, with a little bit more thought and meaning behind it. What we have to remember is that every time that is being shared, we get infection and mortality and admissions to hospitals and things like that. What we don't get is how many people have successfully been admitted into hospital, treated and sent out. Oh, we see the odd one or two and they have a big clap going down the corridor. But actually what we don't get is the thousands of others that are managing to get out of hospital perfectly well as a result of the fantastic care that they're receiving. What we don't get is how many people have actually had a positive test and that's the first thing they've known about it. Oh, they've had COVID, but they've been completely asymptomatic. They don't even know that they had it, and yet they had a positive test. Now, if we're fed that, that's too positive. That won't control the situation well enough. So we just need to bear in mind that it's our choice. If we're going to be given those figures, we can listen to them, we can take heed from them, we can look after ourselves and all our loved ones as a result, but we still have to know that behind those nasty figures, there are good ones too. And there will be a reason why we're not being given them, but we do need to remember that they're there. When we talk about being fed rubbish, I can't get my head around this. I really can't. So this is why I share it. When we talk about the sharing of rubbish, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Now, I am open that my mother-in-law gets these magazines, and on the odd occasion, I am tempted to read them. Yeah, I am definitely a closet take-a-bake reader. But the point is when I was doing so the other day, it suddenly struck me what was happening. Because when we read these magazines, we need to be very careful. This is one brand of magazine. This is just one brand. And this is the magazine that is being sold all over the UK, and it's being fed to people that are paying good money for it as a light-hearted coffee time, break time magazine. And when we look at the headlines, it's hardly surprising that we love this magazine because it's so upbeat. Because when we look at the headlines, of course, in the first one, somebody's had an axe attack. On the second one, somebody was raped while she was asleep. The third one, somebody murdered her nan to play the lottery. And then a trip to IKEA left me dead. Oh, trust me, when I go to IKEA, I'm brain dead by the time I leave. But these are really scary headlines. It's crazy. People pay to allow this rubbish through their letterbox on their doorstep. And we read these things completely numb to the amount of problem they might cause us. Our brain knows no difference between imagination and reality. So when we tell sad stories, we cry. When we tell happy stories, we laugh. I only had to tell you that story about John Smith earlier, and I choked. Why did I choke? That was back in 2016. What on earth am I getting emotional about? The point is when I tell you that story, I had to see the pictures in order to relate the story to you. When I did that, you got the story too. You related pictures in your head. Every single one of you, without exception, had a visual image of what John Smith looks like. You've never met him. Not once have you ever met John Smith, and yet every single one of you knew what he looked like when I told you the story, because your brain made an image to fit him. Now, the point is, when you're reading something, your brain does exactly the same thing. So when you read about somebody being murdered for a lottery ticket, when you read about a rape in sleep, unfortunately, your brain, which knows no difference between imagination and reality, buys into that story. And it sends you on an emotional roller coaster, just like my story about John. The dafty thing, the ironic thing, is that this magazine has a very distinctive title. I'm not picking on them, but this magazine is called Pick Me Up. Pick Me Up? You're reading about murders and rapes and axe attacks. That's going to pick you up? I think not. I'm sorry, but I really do think the trace description standards and all that should be on the case of these magazines, because there is nothing about picking you up about reading stuff like that. So it's being aware of the rubbish we're being fed that affects our outlook on life. Thankfully, us gentlemen, we don't tolerate that. We won't read rubbish like that. And that's not a sexist comment, but you won't find any of that rubbish. You'll find mental health guidance in a men's magazine. But the point is that we don't buy into that. And I really don't know what the difference is. I'd be fascinated to know. There's no judgment in that statement. All I'm saying is, if you are keen on reading those magazines, just be careful how much you take in, because it will make a difference as to how your mind is affected, as to whether or not you're reading them and taking them in, or whether you're just casting off and saying it's just a story. The glass box in the corner also feeds us lots of rubbish. Lots of people will tell me, I haven't got time to look after me. I haven't got time to have a walk. I haven't got time to go for a swim. I haven't got time for any hobbies. And yet the same people will tell you all the latest storylines on EastEnders and Emmerdale and Neighbour. Oh, they know them inside out. They haven't got time to do anything. That's because they're spending 16 hours a day watching soaps. The trouble is, all of our soaps are negative. All of our soap operas are around domestic abuse, or about miscarriages, or about fights, or disputes. And if you look at the top right-hand corner, Emmerdale Farm was kind enough to have an air disaster on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas. Have an aeroplane fly into a Yorkshire village. It's just crazy. But we buy all this rubbish. The adverts in between all of the ITV soaps are the ones that generate the most money. And why? Because so many people watch this negative rubbish. If I had my way, if I took on Boris's job tomorrow, and he's welcome to it, I don't want it. But if I had the Boris's job tomorrow, the first thing I would do, no, I wouldn't do anything about poverty as much as it's important or anything like. I would ban EastEnders in an instant. My first green paper going through the government would be ban EastEnders. And I'm sorry if you're a fan, but I have never seen such a negative rubbish in my life. And it affects people. People buy into this so much that they send letters to Deirdre Langton when she went to prison on Coronation Street. People send flowers to weddings and funerals on soaps. They buy into this rubbish, and it's all based on dispute and negativity. And of course, oh my God, Facebook has to be true. It has to be true because it was on social media, so it has to be true. I've seen it. The amount of conspiracy theories and things like that that are shared out on here, fake news and everything else, it has to be true because it was in color. You saw the pictures, you've seen the evidence, and of course the camera never lies. Not once do you ever see an image in color that isn't true, of course. And I'm really, obviously looking at my own photograph there, I am incredibly grateful that the camera never lies. The point is, of course, is that took me less than 5 minutes. Genuine timing. I timed myself doing it. That took me less than 5 minutes to create that. And of course, the only tweak I had to make was I had to make my hair a slightly different color. Other than that, it's a perfectly true photograph. But the point I'm making is that people will see that. And if it's on social media, a lot of the time, another couple of minutes spent on that, and I could have convinced complete strangers who have never met my corpulent self to know that that's me. Oh yeah, I could put images up like that, and I could sell a weight training program in an instant, because that has to be me. We see photographs, we see video, we see films, and immediately on social media, we believe it. And it's scary what people are believing. It really is frightening how people are getting worried about the world we live in, when in actual fact, it's very clever editing. So caution is sensible, but we need to make sure that the fear, we know that fear can be disproportionate. So let me give you an example. I live in Bristol, as you can clearly tell by my accent, which I wasn't aware of until Jackie pointed it out. So thank you for that, Jackie. But I live in Bristol, and I've been very lucky. I live in a part of Bristol which is very rural. And we're holding on to that with white knuckles, hopefully. But I've always lived in the same village, apart from when I went off to do my military service. We returned to put our boys through some nice schools here. So I am lucky that I'm walking through the same neighborhood now as a 55-year-old man that I did when I was a little boy. I was walking down a path the other day, absolutely gospel true story. I was walking down a path the other day on my own, on my morning exercise, and I suddenly realized that I was passing the tree. Oh my goodness, that's the tree. Now, I know that sounds silly because you've got trees as well, so it's not the only tree. But the reason I called it the tree is because it was my best friend in my childhood. When I was a little boy, I was born in 1966, I'm 55, and I lived in a time when we were allowed out to play. I lived in a time where we were allowed to literally go out and spend all day out and about. My parents were not neglectful. They were clearly loving and caring. My dad was a police officer. No reflection on why I became one, but he was. And so he was more than aware of the dangers out there. But he was realistic, and he allowed us to go out and play. And when we played, we went to the tree, this one specific tree. And this tree was known by everybody in the neighborhood. If I said to my mum and dad we were going out playing, my brother and I would say, we're off to play. And they would say, where? And I'd say, we're going to the tree. And they knew exactly which tree we meant. And during the summer, this tree was absolutely full of gaggling little monkeys. It was literally like something out of the jungle. There were children hanging off of every bough on this tree. It was fantastic. It was a castle. It was a spaceship. It was a helicopter. It was anything you wanted it to be. Whatever day you went there, this tree was so compliant. She joined in and she became anything you wanted her to be. And I looked at that tree and I suddenly recognized that it was the same tree. And my first reaction was, oh my goodness, that is so nice to see. That tree has restored itself. Look, she's full of lush leaves. She's absolutely stunning. She's beautiful. All the new growth on it was amazing. And within a moment, I suddenly became very sad because I suddenly realized that the reason that tree is so full of new growth is that there aren't any little hands and feet knocking the buds off anymore. There aren't any little boys and girls hanging in that tree playing at being a castle or a airplane or a palace. And it's because of that little tree now is the loneliest thing in the world, that she's got nothing else to do with her time but to fill the leaves. So unfortunately, the reason that's happened is because people are scared. That tree is no longer filled with kids because we're scared. We knock our young people for doing nothing but playing their electric games. But actually, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the people that have never let them outside the front door because they're so scared. They've bought those electronic systems for the kids to play on because we're scared. There are pedophiles out there. Oh my God, there are abusers out there. I was playing in that tree when Gary Glitter was in the charts. I was playing in that tree when Jimmy Savile was doing all the things he shouldn't on Jim Will Fix It. They were always there. But of course, the reason that we're so scared of people like that is because we're more aware of it now. We are so aware of it now. Actually, there are far less cases of abuse now than there were then. So we need to be really aware of the fact that because our fear is disproportionate, we can feel really sad and unlucky to live in this world, so much so that poor tree doesn't get played with anymore. But in actual fact, because we're so much more aware, we are over scared. If a murder had happened in my day, but when I was a little boy, if it had happened in Bristol, we'd have heard about it. If it happened in Bath, it might take a week to get to us in the local newspaper. If it had happened in London, yes, it would have been on the national news. But if it happened in Glasgow, we might not have heard about it. Now, if a murder takes place in Sydney, we get live footage of the investigation within 5 minutes. The problems have always happened. The world is safer now than it's ever been. But the problem is we're just more aware of what's going on. And so our fear is disproportionate. We get what we think about all the time. So let's get this one down now and stop the share, because actually it's much better to speak to you face to face to be able to put it over properly. Right, so sorry, the share was so much prettier than me, but you're going to get me now. And we're going to get positive. Because the point is that we do have control over our own negativity and positivity. We can watch all that rubbish, but then we can take Einstein's advice and we can decide that actually we can make the decision that we live in a much friendlier universe than other people are trying to sell it to us. So the reason I say that is, now, some of you will have seen my presentation about the law of attraction, and I do not backtrack from that. I live my life by the law of attraction. I'm not talking about that necessarily here today. What we can do is we can actually approach it from a completely different point of view, and that's the scientific side of things. So what we can look at is that we do have the power in our own heads, scientifically proven power, to actually be more positive and to experience a more positive life and a positive experience of this life that we share as a result of our thought processes. There's an awful lot of people that talk about Freud and Carl Jung and all the other psychologists and psychiatrists and mind experts in the world, but very few people talk about a wonderful man in the late 1800s by the name of William James. William James is known as the father of American psychology. And William James had a really radical view of the way that we think and feel. Now, for years and years, for centuries now, we have had the knowledge, or the theory, but it is knowledge, of the fact that what we think about affects how we feel. How we feel affects how we behave, and how we behave affects the response of the world around us. So when we look at that, what we think about, if we wake up on a morning and we think we're going to be lucky, actually what happens is we feel lucky. If we feel lucky, we're going to behave like lucky people. And if we appear like lucky people, other people and the universe around us responds in that way. If on the other hand, we wake up and we think we're unlucky, we're going to feel unlucky. And then we behave like unlucky people, and the rest of the world responds to us in exactly the same way. Now we do that anyway. We can be very susceptible to a thing called unconscious bias. An unconscious bias is something that I came across all the time in my previous career. So, for an example, at times as a police officer, I was described personally. I was insulted in the form of the fact that I was racist, that I was homophobic, that I was misogynistic, that I was uncaring, that I was lazy, that people told me that all I ate was donuts. People told me that I didn't ever pay any taxes because they were convinced by some red top newspaper article at some point that a police officer never pays any form of tax. That's the government's thank you for being a police officer. Trust me, that is not the case. In actual fact, police officers pay higher what's it called, national insurance throughout their whole career because they know that we retire earlier. So actually my stamp is a lot higher than anybody else's. And not a lot of people know that, to quote Michael King. So all these things were labeled onto me, but I was also told that I was courageous, that I was brave, that I was selfless, that none of which are any more true than me being racist or homophobic or misogynistic. The whole point of that what I'm saying is people made that decision based on the one point that I was wearing a uniform. The one point that I wore a uniform, and their upbringing, their previous experiences of other people, and I'm not saying police officers are saints, what I'm saying is they will have judged me on a previous experience of somebody else wearing the same uniform. So we can think things that are not necessarily true just because we have that unconscious bias. So if we are thinking that a police officer is a violent Nazi, another thing I've been called, which is far from the truth, then you're going to feel that being in my company is actually not a nice thing to be. As a result of that, you're going to behave in a particular way. It will be unconscious, but you won't be friendly and warm towards that police officer who is a violent Nazi. And as a result, the response you get from your standoffishness is probably a little bit colder than it would have been if you treated me with the same warmth and respect that other people did. If, on the other hand, you think a police officer is a hero, you're going to think that, you're going to feel it, you're going to behave completely differently around that person. And even that response isn't going to be the right one because none of them were. They were paid to be there as I was. So the whole point is how you think affects how you feel, how that you feel affects how you behave, and how you behave affects the response of the world around you. It's been proven that that is the case. William James took that one step further. And he said, right, okay, well, if that works, then it must by default mean that you can turn that around the other way as well. So rather than think and feel and behave, why don't we say that if we behave in a certain way, we will eventually learn to feel that that's correct. And if we feel that's correct, that's going to change our way of thinking. It's called the law of reversibility, or as he called it, the as-if theory. So if we approach life as if we are lucky, we are actually going to feel lucky. And if we actually feel lucky, we're going to think lucky. And then if we think lucky, it goes back the other way. We feel lucky, we behave lucky, and the world treats us like lucky people. It's been proven time and time again. There are a number of big universities in America, Yale and Harvard, all the big universities that have got huge psychology departments have gone out of their way to try and prove him wrong. Not because they're spiteful, but because that's what they do. They test theories and they bend them until they snap, and then they make their own theories as a result of their research. William James's research has never, ever been proven wrong. Time and time again, they've done experiment and they've put people into closed or open environments and put them through tests. And every time it's worked out that William James was right. In actual fact, it's exactly the same theory as method acting. Now, some time ago, Konstantin Stanislavski created the method acting approach. You can tell I've got an actor as a son, can't you? So the method acting approach is the one that's followed by people like Marlon Brando. Most people will know that Marlon Brando is a method actor, but of course, Sandra Bullock also is a method actor. The latest ones that you might have heard of that are the big names doing it are people like Daniel Day-Lewis, and believe it or not, one of our spiritual community friends, and that is Jim Carrey. A lot of people don't realize that Jim Carrey, the madcap comedian, one of my personal favorites, but the guy that did The Mask, or Liar Liar, or Yes Man, brilliant film. Jim Carrey is incredibly spiritual. Jim Carrey has his own Buddhist temple in his back garden. I'm sure his back garden is a little bit bigger than mine in Bristol, but he's facilitated a Buddhist temple in the back of his garden. Now, Jim Carrey is not only an incredible comedic actor, he's actually very, very deep and meaningful when he does his darker roles more recently. And one of his latest roles, he conducted that under the method acting approach, and he swore that he would never use method acting again. Because method acting requires you to adopt the personality and thinking processes of your character from the moment you get your script to the moment that you finish filming. Even in your off-duty hours, you're expected to be that character offset. So if you are James Bond and you're filming James Bond from April until August, from April the 1st to the very last day of filming in August, you are James Bond. It doesn't matter whether you're off duty or on. So I'm sure that the intimacy and love life of that actor must go up through the roof during that period of time. But so does the impulsive need to run up and down cranes, apparently. But the point is that you adopt that mindset and you live your life by it. Now, if you are playing a serial killer, you are clearly not expected to go out and commit serial killings, but you are required to try to exercise a complete lack of empathy. You are meant to be completely unsympathetic. You are meant to be dismissive of other people's feelings, and you continue to do that all the time you're in that role. Jim Carrey has gone public with the fact that the last time he played such a dark role, when he finished filming, it scared him. Because what had happened was that when people asked him about his politics, he couldn't remember what they were. When he was asked questions about what his favorite food was, he couldn't remember what his favorite food was. Because what he'd been doing for such a long period of acting and filming was he'd been living as if he was a completely different person. And he'd been doing it so long that his brain had trained that if he behaved that way and thought that way, that's the way he thinks as well. That's how powerful the as-if theory is. It really does retrain your mind. So rather than think, feel, behave, if we actually start to behave and feel and think, we become completely different people. Now, that doesn't mean we have to turn into the next Hannibal Lecter. What it does mean is that we can change our thought processes and, as a result, our overall experience of life. Now, if we're looking for proof of that, there is a lovely gentleman who wrote a book called The Luck Factor, and his name is Professor Richard Wiseman. Now, you might know Richard Wiseman. If you see his photograph on Google, you will probably recognize him from television. He's been on a number of television studies. But Richard Wiseman is a gentleman who is a clearly open skeptic. He also writes a book called Paranormality. And if you read that one and you've got any spiritual beliefs, you will want to burn that book by the time you finish it, because he completely undoes anything spiritual. There's no such thing as mediums. There's no such thing as clairvoyance. He literally takes it apart and explains why he thinks everything happens in their acts and everything else. I'm sitting there reading it. By the end, I'm quite tolerant, but by the end I was starting to boil over, because I've had experiences that he can't explain away. I'm sorry, he just can't. Right, so going back to his good book, in my humble opinion, The Luck Factor explains a number of the pieces of research that he did. And when I read it, I have to say it blew my socks off, because it confirmed everything that I believed and knew of the thought processes affecting your experience of life. He explained that he was not convinced by the law of attraction, but as the head of psychology in, I think it's Huddersfield University he's at, he decided to conduct some experiments to find out if being lucky or unlucky by your own decision does affect your experience of life. So he got lots of people to get in touch with him and to declare themselves whether they thought they were inherently lucky or inherently unlucky. And once they'd identified themselves, he split them into the separate groups, and he put them through a number of different experiments. For a start, he got them to relay certain stories where they decided to whether or not they were lucky. Well, what stories could they tell him that would confirm that? And if they were unlucky, what awful experiences had they had to be able to think that way as well? So once he'd confirmed they belonged to each group, he put them through the same experiments. Now, two of them that I can explain to you easily this evening. The first one was he gave every single one of them individually in a closed room a copy of the same newspaper. And whether they were lucky or unlucky, they had exactly the same task. What they had to do was they had to discover how many photographs were in that edition of the newspaper. Every single one of them got the same edition of newspaper, clearly, that's the experiment, and they were asked to find out how many photographs there were. The unlucky people started with I'm going to get this wrong. There's going to be so many photographs in this damn paper. I'm going to get this wrong. The unlucky people, in the huge majority, read that paper through time and time again, counting the photographs as they went. And I bet I've missed one, so they'd start again. And on average, they went through it maybe 6 or 7 times each. The lucky people, a huge majority of them, didn't get past page 3. Not because it had a voluptuous young lady on it in the sun, but because it had a huge headline on page 3 that said, "Do not read any further. There are 163 photographs in this newspaper." The lucky people saw that. The unlucky people aren't that lucky. They didn't see it. It's exactly the same newspaper. Because they were so convinced that they haven't got the luck that makes them able to be able to find out how many photographs there are, they literally were so obsessed with getting it wrong that they weren't even looking at the paper properly. That's how unlucky they are. The universe hadn't even gifted them the gift of sight to be able to use the damn newspaper properly. Even better was, unbeknown to most of the unlucky people, there was another advert just a little bit further on when the lucky people just thought, I know the answer, I'll just continue to read the paper. There was another little advert that said, if you disclose to the examiner that you have found this advert, we'll give you £100. The only people that claimed the £100 were the lucky ones. They either didn't see it, or when they did, they actually came out with stuff like, I didn't see anything because that was obviously a wind-up, wasn't it? Nobody gets £100 for doing nothing. That would be far too lucky. Or some people actually said, I didn't say anything because other people were bound to have got there first, and there was bound to be a limit to the budget, and it was bound to have run out by the time I got there. So they didn't even bother. It's absolutely crazy. The second experiment out of the many that he did that I can explain to you easily was that they set up a coffee shop. And they separated the people one at a time, lucky and unlucky, and they sent them one at a time into the coffee shop. And that coffee shop had been set up. The coffee shop was selling coffee, as you might expect, and inside the coffee shop were 4 tables. On 3 of the tables, all 3 chairs had been taken. They were already occupied by people drinking coffee. On the 4th, there are only 2 chairs, one of which was occupied by a gentleman wearing a suit with a briefcase at his feet. They also put a £5 note on the floor immediately outside of the cafe. So when they sent the people in one at a time, what happened was they were told that they needed to get a cup of coffee, drink it in the store, and not leave until they'd finished their cup of coffee. The unlucky people walked into the coffee shop, they bought their cup of coffee, and then they stood there drinking it. Very, very few, if maybe 1 or 2, went to the one empty chair in the coffee shop to sit down. When the lucky people were sent in, they all of them found the £5 note. All of the unlucky people had missed it because that's just not their luck to find money lying on the floor. The lucky people found the £5 note on the way in. They checked it didn't belong to anybody. Of course, all the actors and stooges said, no, it's not ours, mate. Okay, so that's £5 up. Thank you very much. A good number of them put it into the charity box that was sitting on the counter. But then they went to buy their coffee. They took away their coffee from the counter and they immediately went and sat down by the gentleman who sat on his own. The vast majority of them spoke to him. Now, when they did, they found out that actually he was an entrepreneur and his random act of kindness was to actually give somebody some money. And so they all ended up with a nice reward for speaking to him. That was part of the experiment. But the unlucky people didn't even sit by him. Now, when they were asked afterwards, the lucky people all said, well, there was a chair there. I immediately thought, how lucky. There's only one of me and I've got 1 chair. It's clearly meant to be and I'm going to sit in it. And then when they were asked why they spoke to them, because that sort of thing happens. Do you know what? It's very rare that they would sit by somebody who they didn't find some connection with somewhere along the line. Maybe they might know someone that they knew, or maybe they might be able to help each other, or maybe it's just nice to pass the time of day with someone. The unlucky people were asked, why didn't you sit at the table? Oh, well, there was only 1 chair and he looked busy and I didn't want to sit by somebody I didn't know. And besides, even if I spoke to him, people don't want to speak to me. I got nothing to offer. Oh, God, half the time I speak to people, they just completely ignore me. Well, of course they do if you're walking around with a face like that. But the point is that they missed out on that opportunity. So it's been recognized that people that think themselves lucky get lucky, not only because they are looking for luck all the time, because their brain is out there seeking it out and they find it, but also because when opportunities arise, they grasp them. They have that bravery to say, the only reason the universe has provided me with an empty chair is because I'm clearly meant to meet that gentleman with the briefcase. And they actually engage in that conversation. I would guarantee that the vast majority of you won't stand in a shopping queue very long in Lidl or Aldi, and there are other branches available, but I'll bet you don't stand in a queue for very long without saying good morning or passing some time with the child in the trolley behind you. Don't stand by me in a shop because you will end up having a full-blown conversation. But the point is that if you are unlucky, you will see people that are in front of you or behind you in that shopping line actively avoiding eye contact with you. I guarantee if you ask them, they would say they were unlucky. What on earth would they want to speak to that stranger for? It's just crazy, absolutely crazy. And the people that you might do a random act of kindness, you might let somebody go ahead of you in the shopping line. You might, if you're really kind, You might look and see that somebody is just holding on to a can of Coke behind you, and you might go, okay, I'll go ahead, and he's going to really curse me because I've got a trolley full. But what he doesn't know is I'm going to pay for his can of Coke when I get to the till. And when he comes through, that lady's going to say, don't worry about it. That man you were cussing just now, he's just paid for that for you. So have a nice day. Now, if you do that, that's fine. But there will be the unlucky people following, thinking, why, what's he want for his cup of, what's he after? Why is he pay for my coat? That don't happen to me. If you're a lucky person, you just say, thank you very much. You look to the heavens and you thank the universe for what they've done for you. So the point is that if you don't think you're lucky right now, I really, really hope that that's not you. But if you don't, there's no judgment from my part. What I'm asking you to do is start living your life as if you are. Start living your life as if every day is a blessing, because let me tell you now, tomorrow is not guaranteed. That is not the negative statement it sounds like. I'm afraid I've met a lot of people in my life that have not made tomorrow when they fully expected to. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, but when you live today to the fullest, that's good news. Because if you do get tomorrow, you're going to live that to the full as well. And it's a fantastic way of living life. But the point is if you don't feel like that, try to act as if you feel like that, just for a few days. See how your mindset turns around. If you think yourself lucky, if you behave like a lucky person, luck will be showered on you. It's amazing. And when that happens and you then share it back, that is so karmic, it's unreal. I've got some lovely experiences where just doing certain people a favor, people I've never met before or since, has actually turned my luck around no end, because the universe does say, do you know what? You're a good person. I'm going to treat you. I'm going to give you a nice treat. I'm going to make sure that you're looked after today. And it's a fantastic feeling when it happens. You don't go out to seek it, but when you get that karmic return, oh boy, it's lovely confirmation that we live in a really friendly universe. So when we make that decision, just like Einstein says, this really does turn things around. The other Einstein quote that I love, just to round this off before we open it to questions, Jackie, because people are glazing over if I'm not. The other little quote I like, and I'm going to get it word perfect by doing this. Einstein said, your imagination is your preview of life's coming attractions. That means so much to me. My beautiful wife actually had that engraved on the back of my iPad when she gave it to me. Your imagination is the preview of life's coming attractions. What you think about is a trailer of what movie you're going to experience. Now, your life is your movie. You are the director of the action in that movie. Whether you want to make it a really lovely, feel-good Spielberg or a really violent and nasty Tarantino, it's up to you. But when you're doing the direction with your thoughts, that's what's going to play out on your screen. I'm very careful about the direction that I give my movie, and I really hope that you do too. So, Jackie, I think that's me done for what I'm going to say. So it's whether it's opened up any questions or whether you just want me to shut up and go away now.
Righty-ho. Well, we're up to time anyway on what we would have been, but when we started with that story and the meditation. So hopefully everyone's okay with this. If there is any questions in the chat box, I'll just have a look, but I don't think there is. If anyone wants to unmute and ask any questions, by all means do. I'll just have a quick look at the... I think most people are just agreeing with so much of what you said. And Fiona said, pick me up. Isn't that an instruction just to pick the magazine up, which I thought was very good, yeah.
Well, yeah, do you know what? That's probably that's a bit of subliminal advertising, isn't it? Probably right, actually. That's a very clever marketing ploy, Fiona. That's been missed on me. That's genius that she's picked that up.
Yeah, as soon as she said that, I thought that's right, isn't it? Sue Gray is saying, Andy, I've been practicing lucky thoughts and affirmations every day and really charge me up for the day. Still waiting to get the good luck I'm affirming.
Charge me up for the day.
I'm a wordsmith.
Oh, you'll get it.
Yeah,
you'll get it. What I say, yeah. What I say to people is, when you're looking for that luck, don't look too hard. Because when you focus on something that you're looking for all the time, what you're missing in the meantime is all the blessings in the periphery. If you're constantly, people will very often say to me as a hypnotherapist, I'll say to them, what miracle would you like to create? And they would very often say, oh, I'd like to win the lottery. Oh, that's fine. Okay. And lots of people, when I talk about the law of attraction, they say, I want to win the lottery. And what you're talking about is rubbish, because I've been affirming that I'm going to win the lottery every day, every weekend. I've been saying, I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to win the lottery. And it hasn't happened. And I say to them, that's fine. If you're going to have that as your affirmation, that's fine. Trust me, the universe will have heard you and it will make your numbers come up. Whether or not it comes up in your lifetime is a completely different matter. Because when you ask to win the lottery, you're joining a very big queue. And your universe is so friendly that it wants you to win the jackpot. Now, if it made every person who's going, I want to win the lottery, I want to win the lottery. If the universe did it in the time that they wanted, that would mean that every person asking to win the lottery would do so next Saturday. And every person winning that lottery would have to share the prize. And that would make your share of the lottery millions about tuppence halfpenny. Now, the universe isn't that spiteful. It's already heard your request. But actually, winning the lottery, you don't need to do that. I'm the richest man on earth. I have a lovely wife. I have a lovely home. I've got 2 incredibly successful and healthy children. I have a job that I absolutely adore. I have the real pleasure of speaking to people like you. So often it's unreal. I am the richest man on earth. And sometimes I don't know where my next penny is coming from. I don't need that. My heart still beats, I've got fresh air in my lungs, and I've got love in my heart. That is beyond measure when it comes to money. I am the richest man on earth, and I don't need a lottery win to prove it. So when you're looking at things that you're trying to get in the way of good luck and it's material, and you're looking on nothing but that, just affirm that you're lucky, you're happy, that you're blessed, and funnily enough, things will move your way. It's incredible. Go on.
I used to do the diary. I do my diary every day, but I used to, for a whole year, I made it a purpose to write 3 gratitudes in every day from the day. 3 things that I was grateful for every day. And that, even though I don't write that in the diary now, that is still such a huge part of my day, really, because I notice the things that I'm grateful for. And that sort of, you just realise that, even if it's like a chap says, go in front of you in the queue, or, you know, someone lets you out of the road at the end, or simple things, but there's such a lot to be grateful for.
Yep. And I know I take it to the extreme, Jackie, but I can honestly say that even when something goes wrong, I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because there is yin and yang. There is always balance. And when something goes wrong for us, there is always something that's going to go right at the end of it. So let me give you my latest example. My latest example is that our this is a silly one, but this is how it works for us. Our fridge freezer went bang about a 12-month ago. And that's an achievement. For a fridge freezer to actually go bang is quite an achievement. It managed it. So we replaced it. Karen is a fantastic online shopper. She will get a bargain if it kills her, and very often it usually does. She gives up eating while she's looking for her bargains, bless her. So we find this fridge, and this fridge is all singing, all dancing. It's in the sale, and it's 350 quid in the sale. Oh, beautiful. Right, so we buy it, and it's the best fridge we've ever owned. It really is top notch, and it was just because it was in the sale. We've only had it about 12 months. Karen opens it up and there is a split appeared on the inside casing. Now, some people would say, are you kidding? We've had this a year, for crying out loud. A brand new fridge, it costs a lot of money and it's split already? What are we doing? No, that's fine. It's split. It's under guarantee. It's inconvenient, but we will call out the engineer. And sure enough, the engineer comes out. He takes one look. Karen says, are you going to fix it? He said, oh, no, missus. No, it's beyond fixing. We can't fix that. Okay. He says, but what they will do, because it's guaranteed, what we'll do is we'll replace it like for like. You'll get a brand new fridge freezer. Like for like, you'll get a new one. Thank you very much. This is fab. This is the sort of luck we experience. So he writes his report. Next thing we know, we get a phone call. And the phone call says, you know, we were going to replace your fridge like for like. Yeah. We can't do that because we don't make it anymore, and unfortunately that model isn't available. Right. But what we can do is we can offer you this one. Okay. We're not going to charge you any more money, but actually what we're going to do is we're going to do like for like, but we'll send you this one because it's the only one that we can get anywhere near it. So they send us another fridge. It's exactly the same make, but it's a completely different model. It's got the same fridge and freezer comparisons and all that. We accept this lovely fridge. It's not the one that we picked. It's not the one we wanted, but it'll do. Karen goes onto the web to find out how much it was worth. When we go on to, just out of interest, we go onto the web and we put in the model number. We paid £250 for our fridge that went wrong within a year. What a cuss. But actually, John Lewis are currently selling our model now for 950 quid. It's cost us no more. Now, some people would have cursed about that. Oh, the inconvenience. But actually, our fridge going wrong has ended up with something 3 times the price. And we've not had to pay another cent towards it. So rather than accept the disaster as a disaster, wait a little while, it turns into a blessing. And I've got so many examples of that. I could keep you here all night. Genuinely, unbelievable how often that happens. But when you think of it as being lucky, what you do is you just wait a while and that luck will come and knock you off your feet. But if you go with the first disaster, oh yeah, by the time you get that in the fridge, well, all right, so it's £300, £600 more, but it's not the one I wanted. Oh, okay, give it to me, I'll deal with it. I'll have it, I have no problem. So the more you think that way, the more it becomes habit. And you just wait long enough, the good luck will come and you'll recognize it so much quicker.
Fiona's saying every cloud has a silver lining.
There you go. That is the saying, isn't it? Absolutely. That's what I live my life by. Now, before we go anywhere, Jackie, I better just be kind enough to answer this question that was sent in.
Thank you.
Somebody, who is it that wrote this?
Linda.
Linda.
Yeah.
Right. So Linda wrote a question in before we started, and it says, with all the sayings of belief in the sayings and beliefs in the world encouraging us to attract what we want, where does a life plan fit in? Do we cause concern for our guardian angels or spirit guides when we opt to go ahead and simply try and get what we want, as opposed to what we need or what has been planned for our life? Okay, now that's a very deep philosophical and spiritual question. So I can only answer from my humble opinion as to how I think that works. I do think we have a life plan to a certain extent. I do not think for one moment that the good Lord, nature, the universe, or guardians, as whatever you believe in, has set that in stone. I do not believe that for one moment. I love the approach that Robert Holden, you might have heard of a man called Robert Holden. I think you might have come across that gentleman. I know damn well you have. And he has that lovely, lovely approach that actually we are all love. We all come from love and we're going to go back to love. And actually, when we arrive on this earth, however many times we do it, we are a manifestation of that love's desire to experience life. We experience this mortal and earthbound experience so that love can learn more about itself and about the way it exchanges and interacts with itself. There would be no point in sending us here if love already knew what the end result was going to be. There's no adventure in that. So what it does is it comes down and there's certain things it's going to say. It's going to say, right, I want you to be a bloke. I want you to be a woman. I want you to be married. I want you to be single. I want you to go through a divorce. I want you to go through some horrific experiences to see how damn resilient I can be. So when we do that, what it does is it just says, there you go. This is the plan that I've got for you up until now. But I'm also going to grant you with free will. I'm also going to allow you to develop things. What I won't ever let you do is fall on flat on your face. So if we have our guardians looking after us, and I do know that mine are there because I keep being told that, when we're being guided through life, we're not being pushed, we're not being pulled, we're not being controlled, we are being guarded. We are being guarded by our guardians. When we ask for something and we think we need it now, we don't get it because our guardians or the universe decide, yeah, you're going to get it. You don't need it right now. You will get it, and it's already in part of the plan, but you'll get it when you need it. When it's most optimal that you're going to benefit from that gift, that's when you'll get it. So I don't have a problem having my ambitions. I don't have a problem having my requests or my affirmations or anything, because I know that my divine guides, the love that's put me here, will be able to decide when I most need that, and it will come. I can't be impatient. I've asked, and if it's right, it will come, and if it's not, it won't, and I have to accept that. So I have no problem having I have my own free will that might go against the life plan, because if it's not right, guess who's going to stop it? If it is right, it's going to come when it's most needed, most appropriate, and you are going to benefit and appreciate it most. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does. And when you look back over your life, at the time you might think it's, I know I've said this as an example many times, but you know, say the year I broke my leg, I thought was the worst year of my life. I now can look back and know that was the best year, because it took me on a completely different track. So when you look back at anything you've done in your life, you can actually see what the real purpose within that was, and it must be part of your life plan. It might feel
Absolutely.
like everything's falling apart, but it's actually falling together.
Absolutely. When I was a sergeant, I wanted to be promoted to inspector. This is so true. And this is a classic example of what I'm talking about. Even when things go wrong, something good's going to come out of it. When I was a sergeant, I wanted to be promoted. And when I got through my promotion exams and my board, I got the message that, yes, we're going to promote you. And then with the police service, you get that message, and then it could be months before they actually promote you and call you into the position they want you in. In the meantime, all of your colleagues know that you've passed, because it comes out on orders. And every single person you meet, without exception, says, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And my answer, this I really should have known better, but my answer to everybody was, I don't care where they send me, and I don't care what they ask me to do, but the one thing I do not want to be is a force incident manager. I do not, in the police, everything's got letters. It's a FIM, F-I-M, force incident manager. The last thing I want to be is a force incident manager. I do not want to be a firearms commander. 11 months go by, they give me the phone call. Congratulations, Mr. Workman, we are going to promote you to inspector. Great, thank you ever so much. Where am I going? You're going to become a force incident manager. Oh, great. There's only 8 of them in the whole of the Avon and Somerset Constabulary, and it's the one job I didn't want, and it was the one job I got. I went to a clairvoyant a couple of weeks before I got that call, not knowing it was coming, and she said, very soon you're going to get your phone call. I said, thank you, that'd be great. She said, they're going to give you the job that you don't want most. She said, but you must go, because you have got something to do there. And when you come out at the other end of it, you will know why you went there. It's going to be very beneficial to you. And if you do it, then it's going to be worth it. But don't turn it down for goodness. Well, you wouldn't do that anyway, because you have to go through the whole system again if you do. So I get my phone call. I become a force incident manager, and I hate it. It's absolutely horrific. I'm off the streets, I'm in a control room, and the responsibility of all the firearms incidents in my 8-hour shift is down to me. Whether a gun gets taken onto the city of Bristol streets is my responsibility alone, and I hated it. However, I joined the most negative and most incredibly sick, physically sick department in the whole of the force. As a result of that, I used my hypnotherapy knowledge to put together a presentation called Cavemen and Polar Bears. I delivered it 18 times. I reduced their sickness by 66%. As a result of that, loads and loads and loads of different departments paid me on my rest days to come in as a consultant and train their staff. And I wrote a book called Cavemen and Polar Bears as a result of that experience. That was my silver lining. If I hadn't got the very job that I didn't want, the one thing that I never wanted to do, Cavemen and Polar Bears would never, ever have been written. And I'm thankful now I'm thanking you now, universe, for sending me to that place. Because as much as it was horrific and the pressure was incredible, I'm so blessed now, so blessed. And it was all from that horrible experience. So that's my equivalent to your broken leg, Jackie. I thought my world had come to an end. oh my God, my world was only just opening up. And it's just, I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful. So it's just waiting,
Look at the
even
help
if you
you
get them.
give so many there, Andy. The help.
Well,
Sorry, yeah.
that's so kind of you to say so. No, that's so kind of you to say. I hope that it has helped people. The feedback would suggest it has, but that's their feedback, not my big-headedness. I'm humbled by the feedback. I truly am. But it's just a classic example of the universe will send you where it needs you, life plan or not, affirmations or not. But just know that that love is constant. You are part of it. And that universe is not going to harm you, because if it does, there'll be a bigger learning curve involved in that. And you might not know what it is at the time. It might be apparent the next day, next week. It might take a decade. But you will know why you went through the hardships, and you'll be grateful for it happening, I tell you.
We're going to have to leave it there, Andy, but this has been marvellous. If there's anyone with a real burning question, by all means unmute and ask, because we really need to. It's gone way over. It's just like when it goes as a recording, it's a long time to have to sit and think, oh, will I watch that again at this long time, you know?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's...
You always got the option of pulling the plug on me. You really have to do that. Sorry.
No, I don't worry, but it's been fascinating. I'm sure everyone here that, you know. But is anyone would like to ask anything? Yeah, Ruby?
Actually, I just put a question on a chat to say, what's the name of that clairvoyant? Because obviously she wasn't right.
Absolutely. Do you know? She was frightening, Ruby. I'm writing her name now. The frightening thing was that lady said, I don't know when you're going to get your promotion, but I think it's about May, June time. About May, June time. I actually got my phone call on May the 31st. You can't get much more May, June time than the very day in between the two. So absolutely true. She said it's May, June time. And at the very day that she predicted, I got that phone call. So if she tells me that I'm winning the lottery, I start looking at car showrooms, because it's going to happen.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. Anyone else wanted to say anything? No, that's lovely. No. Okay. Thank you so much. Brilliant evening.
No, thank you.
Honestly,
Thank you.
really enjoyed that. Ruby, many thanks, Jackie and Andy. Absolutely excellent session. I could listen to Andy all day, so could I.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
no, honestly, thank you, Andy. And I will just say next week we've got Michelle Fielding and Alexander Quinn talking about Nasara and Jasara. That might sound like some. Have you heard of Nasara and Jasara, Andy?
No, I must admit I haven't. I'm an honest man. I haven't heard those names. No.
It's the new quantum financial system that's coming in, apparently, and they know quite a lot about it. So they're going to be talking to us about that next week. And wow. They're not financial people, but they've looked into this a whole lot. And I think it's worth, what they're going to share with us is worth knowing. So yeah, very grateful though to everyone that's joined us. And Monty has somehow just opened the door and come in. You might hear him. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
No problem. Be lucky, everyone. Be lucky.
Bless you. Oh, end. Why isn't that ending? Oh, there.